2,000 people who work for the BC Public Service right now. And then there are a few thousand more who work for municipal governments and federal governments in British Columbia. And most of those people joined the public service because they really care about the environment, the economy, social issues. Like, they genuinely wanted to give something back. That's why most of us are public servants. The interesting thing is, though, public servants has they have a pretty bad reputation, I think. And some of you as students are sitting here thinking, good God, not me. I wouldn't want to be a public servant. They do have a bad reputation. In fact, it is very true, and you'll see this as you get older and you go to more cocktail parties. If you go to a cocktail party and you ask somebody, what do you do for a living? And they say something vague, like, I'm an economist, or I'm an analyst, but they don't tell you where, right? And they don't give you a level in a hierarchy. I guarantee you they're a public servant. Guaranteed. Do you know why? Because they don't want to get into some long thing about, no, it's not for the pension, and no, I'm not lazy, and I'm not parochial, and I'm not a narrow-minded person, right? So the goal, number one goal of my speech today is to make cocktail parties easier for public servants. There's one other thing though, that's really important, and that is to tell you a little bit about an old idea, which is called systems thinking. And it's an old idea, it's been around forever, but I'm going to tell you a bit about the challenges that we face as public servants and how systems thinking can help us, but also why it's really challenging for us as public servants to really engage in systems thinking. So what's systems thinking? Honestly, I pressed the button. I'm pressing it again. Could someone press the button? Okay, so the next slide's coming up, and what it will say is, what's systems thinking about? Why do we think in systems, right? The reason is because all of those big issues, economy, environment, all those social issues that we face every day as public servants actually are very complex, right? And they require very complex thinking in order to understand what's at the root of them and how are we going to achieve success with some of the challenges, right? Our public policies have been developed to meet all of those divergent demands of clients and others, the environment, the economy, all across British Columbia for decades, right? Decades. And in fact, the more complex the needs, and as new needs layer onto old needs, the more complex becomes the public policy, the more complex become the services, and it becomes harder and harder to tackle challenges. I'll give you an example. And this is a really good example because it tells you a bit about the fact that we naturally think in systems. We all do, okay? So it was a few years ago, and I was asked to lead a public dialogue about health and healthcare. So we went out and asked British Columbians, tell us what you care about around health and healthcare. But there was an underlying need here, and that was the sustainability of the healthcare system. That healthcare costs billions and billions of dollars a year, and those costs are climbing exponentially every year, right? They're eating up a ton of the government budget. And so there's got to be a way for us to talk about solutions around health and healthcare that are going to deal with sustainability. So we start these conversations, and you know, the conversations always start at the easy stuff, like, you know, hospital emergency rooms and long-term care beds and stuff that it's obvious to attach a dollar figure to, right? How much is it costing us to manage health and healthcare? What's really interesting is that the conversation goes on for a couple of hours, and by the end of the day, everybody in the room will tell you that the key issue around healthcare sustainability has a lot less to do with hospitals and hospital costs and a lot more to do with the determinants of health, like poverty, right? If you deal with wealth and you create wealth in society and more people are wealthy, they're going to be healthier. Education is a huge factor in health and healthcare. Nutrition, lifestyle choices, all of these things. So this is the system underneath healthcare. So the more that you have dialogue, the more people start to say, yeah, absolutely, we get it. We think that the system of healthcare and how you get to sustainability is to think about all of these issues. Next one. Okay.
I think this is...
Okay, that would be great if I have the right one. Fantastic. Oh, here. Anyway, there's another one. There it is. Okay, so what do you need to do? You need to reimagine the system, because even though we all get it, like we all get that it's the system you need to think about, it's very hard to create solutions, public policy solutions and other solutions that actually address the system challenges, the basic challenges that we're dealing with, right? From a systems perspective. Why is that? Well, because over decades, there are two reasons actually. So the first reason is when people, British Columbians, Canadians, others, they look at a problem, what they see is that single problem, and they ask government to fix it, right? Fix the problem. And actually, if the government doesn't get on it and fix it pretty quickly, people get really mad at us, right? And then you start telling us we're lazy, parochial thinkers, like I said, and then you go to the cocktail party and it's a nightmare. So we get into this habit of fixing stuff quickly, getting to it quickly. What happens is you get a single solution for what is a very complex problem. You create a program around that solution. So now you have a program. When you have a program, you have a bureaucracy. When you have a bureaucracy, it becomes very hard to change it. And you create stovepipes of solutions, right? One stovepipe after another. Once you've done that, when you get the complex challenges, trying to create the links between the stovepipes is really, really hard. It's really hard, right? So then you have to create another program to fix the problem, and another, and it becomes a real, that's the bureaucratic difficulty that we deal with in government, right? So we have to collectively be thinking about the solutions from a systems perspective, put those pieces of the puzzle together, talk to the people that are affected. That's how you create the solutions. And I'll give you another example. So we were asked a few years ago to think about how are we going to deal with chronic homelessness. So these are the homeless people who have both mental health and addictions issues. And by homeless, I mean they've cycled in and out of homelessness for more than a year. Say, chronic homeless population. And what we were also told was, we're not going to give you any more money, and we want you to start with coordinating all those activities that government does every day to address homelessness, right? So we got government agencies together in 5 communities, and we said, you need to create integrated teams. And it's not about your team, and it's not about you agency or your program. It's about wrapping the services that you deliver around a single person, right? So now you've got the chronically homeless individuals with the services wrapped around them. And what we were trying to do is to get to a place where we could house more than 1,700 people in 18 months. Now the interesting thing was, when we talked to people about this, and we got all our government agencies together and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to collectively work to house these people over the course of the next 18 months. And the first thing we heard from folks was, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. Why is that? Because there are only 200 vacancies. Across those 5 communities, we could only find 200 actual vacancies in housing. And if you're trying to house them, then clearly you need vacancies. So if there are no vacancies, you'll never house them, right? So what they told us was, after the end of week 2, because the end of week 2 was going to be 200 people housed, we wouldn't house any more people. That would be it. Finished. What was fascinating was, we passed week 2, we passed week 3, we blew all of our targets out of the water, and at the end of the 18 months, we absolutely housed 1,700 people and more. It wasn't just the housing, it was the wraparound services, right? It was everybody working outside of their stovepipe. That's what made the difference for the folks. And the other interesting thing is, of the people that we housed, and remember this is the most complex population out there, 85% remained housed after a year. That's a remarkable number. Because actually, the first thing we said was, we don't want to be criticized for counting people and then they leave and then they come back and we count them again. It can happen, right? Statisticians in the room, you know it can happen. So we had to monitor whether they stayed housed, right? I have a few more figures about that one I'll tell you about in a minute. This one really works, it's awesome, happened right away. So what does that have to do with leadership? So what that has to do with leadership is that if you don't have leaders in government, in public service, you're not going to be able to create those linkages between the stovepipes, right? You can't have the conversations with folks that say, we need to get out of the way that we've done business before. We need to think about this problem different. There's a really big issue in any organization which is complex, or around any issue which is complex, and that's to get around people's egos, right? If you work in an organization right now, and you know you have a really good idea, and you want to share it with somebody who maybe is more responsible for that area than you are, and you tell them about it, and if they're all about ego, their first thing is going to be, I don't want anyone to know about your good idea, because it wasn't my good idea, right? We have to get out of that, and we need good, strong leaders to push people away from ego, out of their programs and stovepipes, and into solution building together. That's what leadership is. All right, so here's something interesting. So a couple of years ago, I was invited to a dinner with some high school students and a bunch of public servants, and the idea was to encourage more high school students to think about public service as a career choice. So we're trying to get at the cocktail party problem like really early, right? Grade 1, before they have a cocktail. And it was a fantastic dinner. I sat at a table with a bunch of young people, and it was great, and they were energized, and they said, wow, it's really interesting. I went, wow, so are you? I can't wait, yay. We had this great dinner. We had some inspirational speakers. Everybody was very excited, and then came the question and answer period. And the very first guy that stood up, and he was all nose rings and purple hair, and he stood up and he said, wow, you guys are a lot more interesting than I expected. But who would ever want to work with a man? And I remember being his age, and the closest you'd ever find me to a government office was in my Birkenstocks with a placard yelling at them. You know, like that's, I did that. I was in the advocacy side of government. I wasn't with government at all. So I totally understood what he was getting to, right? But the fact is that in government, you can have some very exciting work, extremely exciting work, particularly if you want to take on some of the difficult and complex challenges that we have facing us. I do have to tell you, though, that my very first job in government was not exciting at all. And I'll just, for a moment, tell you about this one so I can warn you away from any such job. So I had just graduated from law school realizing I never wanted to be a lawyer. That was 3 years of purgatory. I just did not want to repeat as a professional person. And the first job I got, this is in the era, for those of you who are as old as I am, of the Wang computer, which actually is not a computer. It is a glorified typewriter. Anyway, of the Wang computer, what my job was. Now remember, I don't want to be a lawyer. It was to read all of the legal opinions written by the Ministry of Attorney General and categorize them. It's my own private hell. For like 5 months. And I thought, oh Lord, is this what government work is like? Because that's what I thought, and I just don't want to be here. But my second job was so interesting. And it was with the Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs, and it was in a time when suddenly the courts were finding a legal foundation for Aboriginal rights and title in BC, and it changed the landscape of British Columbia. And it was an exciting time to be there and help be a part of that conversation. And I've been part of conversations around how you make better land and resource use decisions, and how you improve healthcare, and how you improve the way we deliver income assistance or integrated services for our clients who are on welfare and so on. I mean, it's fascinating work, and it's fascinating work if you want to tackle the tough issues, but you got to stick with it, right? You really have to stick with it all the time. So, just to wrap it up, it is so important that we get big systems thinkers in government that can help lead us with passion, bring innovative and creative ideas to the public service, engage with people inside and outside government so we get better solutions to our really complex public policy issues. And you know, coincidentally, that actually spells pies, which is also a really great thing and a tasty treat. So knowing that, I think, who could say no? So I welcome you all to, if you're not going to be part of the public service, at least join us in the debate on how we solve some of our bigger public policy issues. So thanks very much.